performance artist, poet, and now philosopher, who has written his ideas, the distillate of 30 years of performing poetry, and indeed thinking, in what he calls an inner conversation about the truth, in a new book called Immediate Eternity and the New Philosophic Reality. Quite a grand title. Thanks for being with us, Copernicus.
Right, New Philosophical World, right.
The New Philosophical World,
Right.
indeed. Are you the discoverer of this world, would you say?
In my opinion, I am. I don't know of anyone else that talks about the world I talk about.
Now, as our viewers know, probably from seeing some of the previous segments of our conversation about this book, which is a book in evolution, if you will. You've been working on it, reworking it, redefining it, streamlining it. What have you found by working with your own material over the last year or so since we last spoke?
I think the answer to that is in the details. The basic concepts have not changed, but the concept has grown deeper and wider from many of the details, new details that have come forth, and also from reaching a certain plateau with the book, and by getting up there and seeing more things. I mean, it's like climbing a mountain with this. You think the manuscript is finished, and then I read it, and finally I'm somewhere else. I'm seeing some other things coming.
But when you say deeper and wider, I'm not sure our viewers would
They're in the details. I can't really get into the details. You can, in this interview, if you like, go through the details. But I mean, it's all details. It's not anything to do with the basic concepts of the book. It's in the details that are there.
You promise your readers that if they follow your instructions about abandoning identity, about understanding, appreciating, and living in an atomic world, conscious of matter that doesn't change, the basic building blocks, that this consciousness, which you call Magava consciousness, will change their lives. How is that going to happen? How does this new consciousness that you are the herald of change somebody's life?
Well, you immediately, when you take on Magava consciousness and attempt to have that consciousness influence your actions, okay, you immediately break out of a very, very tiny, limited world, a world which I call in the book the world of illusiona, the world of illusion, where you define reality only with your bare human senses. That's a very horribly tiny world to live in. So that's what happens when you take on Magava consciousness. You take on the consciousness of the entire universe, and it's not only the consciousness not only stays in your head, okay? You move it into, with practice, you move it into the spontaneous expression of every moment. Okay, so everything you do is now being influenced by your consciousness of the microcosm and the macrocosm. But of course, the macrocosm is made up of the microcosm. In other words, the smallest particles in the entire universe make up the big things in the universe, which is the macrocosm. Mm-hmm. So the microcosm, the atomic and subatomic world, does make up the moon and Venus and all the stars and everything.
Why is it better to be in touch with the macrocosm, the big picture of everything?
The micro.
No.
I said micro.
I know, you're saying it's better to be in touch with the microcosm.
Right.
The basic building block.
Right.
Which most people don't have immediate contact with. I mean, in order to understand these things, you have to have a theoretical grounding, which most people lack. I presume that your own grounding is based on popularizations of science. Presumably you couldn't understand the physics of quark mechanics or whatever. How does the average person come to appreciate this?
You know, I never held a hammer in my life, and I had a mental block against electricity and hammers and nails. My father used to say, "You can't even hold a hammer." I went and bought an old brick building, a brownstone, and I had no money, and guess what? I started banging nails, and pretty soon I was doing it. You know, what I'm saying is if you have a mental block and you think that you're inadequate about the atomic world or physics, and you're intimidated by that, you shouldn't be. You really shouldn't be, because it's very simple. And if you care about yourself and you care about your consciousness, you start from the beginning. What is your body made up of? What is the air that you breathe in made up of? Made up of atoms. Atoms make up all the matter in the entire universe. So you start from there and you build logically, and you can get a primer on physics, because, for example, this book is not a very complicated book in terms of you don't have to know physics to any great degree to understand this book. Do you?
No,
you don't.
No.
So
but you have to have some vague understanding of what's being said generally in terms
Yes,
of...
but I go slowly and I explain it along. It's, I think a person in eighth grade grammar school could understand this. I really think it's all logic, based on logic, and I build. The interesting thing would be if someone reads this and could attack my logic and say that here my logic fails. That would be interesting to me, because there I would grow. But
well, it could be that you have a bunch of elements that are logical, but that in your synthesis you draw wrong conclusions.
Very possible.
Is that
and
possible?
I would love that. I would love somebody to show me. Then they can help me grow.
Well, let's try to get into that synthesis. I'm sure you'd be among the first to admit or to say, as I think you do in your book, that what you're talking about is something of a marriage between science and philosophy. Do you accept that as a...
I think so. I think, I mean, it's the best that we can do. Our scientists...
What is, and what I'm going to ask you, I'm sorry, is, which I should have done, what is the relationship between science and philosophy? How do you see it? Because the ancients also had this kind of marriage before things got differentiated and specialized and all that as they are now, ultra-specialized. And of course, as we've discussed in the past, there is a striking resemblance with the atomists, the ancient Greek atomists. And I was going to ask you what you think, based on a Britannica encyclopedia, a decent authority, I think, by most standards, account of what the atomists are saying, which is this, if I could find it in a nutshell. While it is true that some of the Greek atomists' ideas can rightly be considered as precursors of later physics, the main importance of the old atomistic doctrine for modern science does not lie in these primitive scientific anticipations. Much more important is the attempt to reconcile with the variety and mutability discerned by sense experience the thesis of Parmenides about the unity and immutability of matter. Is that a concern to you, the unity and immutability of matter? It would seem so, because Ma, which you say you're hoping for, the discovery of the absolutely unbreakable, unchangeable atom,
indivisible,
seems to be one of the concerns and one of the things being investigated by the atomists. The possibility of that, anyway.
You mean ancient atomists?
Mm-hmm. The ancient ones, Democritus especially. The great achievement of the Greek atomists, therefore, was that they took a general view of nature as a whole, which made a scientific attitude possible. So just based on what I just said here, because we've talked about it a little bit more vaguely than this, how do you compare and contrast what they were trying to do to what you're trying to do?